Let me start with you by saying, how did you turn around that, and how did you build on what happened at Ferguson?
Well, I think there are two parts. I've been in Jennings, this will end my third year, and it's really not an I, it's a we. It's really collective energy, and the same with the Ferguson piece. It really is about collaboration and how we really work together to make sure that we have progress moving forward. So bringing voices to the table, so often in underserved communities, and we are probably one of the largest, in terms of largest minority, high poverty, we're 91% free reduced lunch, 98% African American, and so with a population like that, so often in underserved communities, voices aren't heard. And so there's this cycle of oppression that continues. And so part of the role is really listening to folks, getting out there, listening to folks, and then saying, what are we going to do about it? And in short order, not having an expanded amount of time to just continue the conversation, but to put conversation and action back to back.
And how did you use the events in Ferguson to build on a racial conversation?
Well, there are a number of things, like many students who walked out of schools across St. Louis, ours wanted to as well. We border Ferguson. We have, some of the family members that are impacted in our district. And even our students said, Dr. Anderson, people on social media are calling us punks for not walking out. We want to walk out. And they were so excited, and they were certainly on an emotional roller coaster. And so it started with, they did a sit-in, and I sat down with them, and we talked, we chanted together a variety of things, no justice, no peace. And when we finished that piece, we went into a discussion about Jim Crow and policing being the new Jim Crow in some ways, and then talking about what do they want to see. How do they want our community to change? How do they want Jennings to change? Young people came back with 3 things that they wanted. The next day, we took that list and we boiled it down to 3 things. And I told them, if you want to march, I'll march with you.
What were the 3 things?
The 3 things were body cameras. They would like to insist upon that. They'd like to see minorities on the police department in the Jennings School District, or at least more minorities in the St. Louis County Police Department that services Jennings. And then they wanted improved community policing. I think that's a pretty good list for young people.
Right. And Clifton earlier today came up with the notion of having a high school student police dialogue, or board actually, or commission. What do you think of something like that?
Well, I think our students would welcome that. Any opportunity to grant access, greater access to individuals who have not been heard in the past is an opportunity worth taking. And so I think if it brings voices to the table in a constructive way, and there's action behind that, I think that can be a good thing. I also think something like that, if not used well, could be detrimental. And I think much of what we're doing, so that it's not for show, but it's really for movement forward and progress. Those 3 things, we were excited. I told the students we're going to march. They said, Dr. Anderson, you're going to get fired. I said, I am. Well, this better be a good march. Y'all better show up. And the first thing was, we do not walk out of school. We stay in school because you have to be educated in order to get the power that you need in order to make changes. And so we're going to march before school. So if you want to meet me at 6 a.m., you show up. About 100 students or so showed up, somewhere between 60 and 150, somewhere in that number. So because students kept coming. I did tell them, now we have to get back to school on time at 8 a.m. So I will fund a bus to take us halfway, and then we will park and march the rest of the way, and we'll have our signs, and we must dress for where we're going, not for where we are right now. So students came in their suits, their bow ties, all of that, and we took the bus halfway, marched the rest of the way. All 3 demands were met. It was phenomenal.
A great learning opportunity.
What baffles me is that there are models across the nation and outside of the nation that are working, that have addressed so many of the things that we talk about. We know what we need to do. It's just about doing it and making sure that those that are in privilege also give the access and opportunity to make these things happen. In Jennings, and it's just been an interesting experience, because we are piloting so many different things, but primarily to show this works, it's possible on a small scale and can be replicated on a large scale, but perhaps in a larger environment, greater resources would be needed, but the idea that it works. So we piloted year-round school. For the last 2 years, we've had students at Jennings Junior High, we called it College Prep Academy, same teachers, but we said, okay, teachers, who wants to work Monday through Saturday who wants to work an extra hour every day, and the last day of school is June 30th. And the teachers that said, I'll do it, we said, okay, those are the teachers for the College Prep Academy, because that's an outlier effect. You can't do what you're always doing and expect different results. I need teachers who are very committed, and I would say all of our teachers are committed, but those that are willing to do far beyond what the traditional model shows you. And so they agreed to doing it, and 150 students are in that particular program. We said, which students? You know, parents who wants to have their students signed up, and those students signed up, and they have been, and they are some of our top performing students. And anybody that wants to visit, you know, a good teacher always loves to brag about their children. So I actually put some little brochures and flyers back there on that last seat, because it is amazing to see. And so then we started thinking about what causes students to lose it so quickly, or the management issues. So then we piloted, well, what about instruments? Parents, why can't students all have instruments? Well, you know, in a large district, resources is a huge issue, and it's an issue for us as well, 91% poverty. But we said, what if we realign this budget and purchase the students their instruments and launch a violin program? And we did a bunch of research on strings and Suzuki and all of this. So students now have music embedded. So year-round music embedded. So then, well, what about preschool? Well, what if we realign our budget? So we're talking a preschool teacher, somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 when you add in benefits and all of that. Well, then let's realign the budget, because we're small. We can do it because we're small. We have 8 schools, and really 7 schools and one program. But if you want to add it up, 8 schools. And so we're small, so let's try that. We have a preschool teacher at every school, mental health at every school. A lot of the things that we say we can't do, yes, we can. And it is possible. So when you say, how are we making the gains? We've reprioritized in our small district 4 square miles in a way and redirected the resources. And what we're trying to do is dispel a myth. Break generational poverty. It is so possible. We know what we have to do. It's a matter of how fed up are you to make sure that it happens. And so this can be replicated.
That's astonishing, especially the, what is a 10.5-month, 8-hour school day, 6-day a week, right? And then universal pre-K for anybody who wants it. You say you took some money and realigned the budget. That almost seems magic. I mean, what did you have to give up?
It's not magic. It's tiring and it's hard work, but it is so well worth it. The gains have been amazing. And now, with that in mind, for us, and when I go into any district, the first thing I look at is the budget. You know, a strong district is going to be academically and financially strong, and you should have a high reserves. In Jennings, they were operating on a deficit for multiple years, which is an issue in and of itself. And I think it was a little bit over $1 million that first year. And so I shared with the board, by December, this budget will be balanced, because if it's not balanced, we can't do anything moving forward. So we just look at what do we spend our money on. In fact, every month, tomorrow is data consult day, every month the principals actually come in and they have to justify everything they spent. Literally the budget for the month. What did you spend your money on? If we had a problem with math, hopefully you spend it on math and you didn't spend it on Twinkies. And so, we look at, and so that causes me as an administrator to say, what am I spending my money on? And am I buying the right things that are really going to impact achievement? So we start reevaluating that. I was fortunate when I started in Jennings, a lot of people were retiring. And most of the people, we have a very stable staff, which is, again, a little different than some of the other districts. We have a bit of turnover, but not as much. And so as people were retiring, before we start filling positions, really looking at, can we reassign duties? And again, this is that outlier, because you have to have a team that's willing to kind of do 5, 6, 7 jobs. Hence the tennis shoes. Okay, tennis shoes aren't for anything but practicality. And so, my director of human resources, for example, she does a lot of her own clerical piece. She does title work. She does some of the core data. I don't have a PR person. The curriculum folks are the teachers. Literally, me going to the teachers and saying, who best but the teachers, because they use the curriculum, they teach it. So a lot of these people, as they retired, we really started looking at 80% of your budget is going to be personnel. So you have to look at your personnel and make sure that those folks are back in the classroom.
And how did it work with the teachers, where you asked some of them stay longer, work harder, work longer days and a longer year? Did you have to get more money for that, or were there some teachers, how did you do that?
Again, realigning the budget. So, you do take that extra hour and say, here's how much. Now, we did apply for the 21st Century Grant, so that's another piece of money, looking at underserved districts and say, we don't know what we don't know. Wow, you all have, we have 200 homeless kids and we don't have a homeless grant? Really? Let's write that grant. So before I started, we had someone that helped us kind of write some of these grants. Now, that's not a sustainable model. Like this year we didn't get the homeless grant. Last year we didn't get it. But we did get the 21st Century Grant, so that takes us for the next 5 years. It's about to be renewed, and so we look forward to that being renewed. But again, right now we're already realigning the budget, because if it is not renewed, it cannot be a reason why we don't continue to provide lunch, breakfast, and dinner. It cannot be a reason why we can't extend the day. And so again, just looking creatively. So the power in Jennings is we're so small, we can pilot things that perhaps Dr. Adams may not be able to in his large environment in the way that we can. We can pilot it district-wide, and the idea is, again, just to dispel the myth. Resources will always be too small. Standards will always be high, and they should be. And so it's really about, what are you going to do with the money that you got? And then and then if you don't have enough, how do you realign and reprioritize in ways that make the most sense to stretch the dollar? That's what families do every day who don't make a lot of money, who are underemployed. They're stretching their dollar and doing what they have, working with what they have.
They are off to a very, very wonderful start.
Dr. Anderson.
And I'm going to speak to that question, if I can kind of piggyback very briefly. One of the items that Dr. Adams talked about is staffing and just having the number of people. And I have to say, hats off. One day the paper loves them, the next day they love to critique them. And I just say I have to give my heart out to this brother, because I think he is doing a phenomenal job. And so with that being said, the number of staff, and I'm going to, if I can tweak it a little bit and you can tell me if I step out of order, the quality and number is essential. And so here I scratch my head, because, I'm in Jennings now. Prior to this, I had charter schools, and prior to this, I had 23 schools in Virginia. This is so replicable on a large scale. The quality is an issue. So I scratch my head and say, okay, his subs and people who may not be the ideal candidate for a position. Why is it that there cannot be an organization? That's why I love TFA, because that's one organization, but an organization that, for this brother, finds thousands of teachers and says, here you go, take your pick. Why does it have to be so hard? It should not be. It really shouldn't be. So when I say this is replicable with the right resources, it's high expectations with support. And so on a large scale, on a small scale, and I will tell you, the myth is that poor students and African American students cannot achieve at high levels. And so every time you make the success, every time you show that that is not true, there will be an excuse as to why it happened. So at a charter school, it's because I was at a charter school and you have flexibility. At this place, it's because of this. In Virginia, it's because it's Virginia. It's a non-union state. We need to stop that. We know this is possible. And so the three things that I have found as a teacher who knew it would work as a principal, as a superintendent, and so on, the three things that I have found that really are the critical points to improving any school: relationships, pedagogy, curriculum. It's really simple, just those three things. And so if I say those three things, and I'm going to say some actionable things, anybody wants to help Jennings, you take your little paper out, come tell you what you can do, come help us. And thirdly, if you want to tutor, right now we have before, after school, and in-school tutoring going on. And so if you are a math or science person, we invite you to come to us and tutor with us. And we're open on Saturdays. But with that, relationships, pedagogy, curriculum, I'm going to give you a few examples of what those look like. If you want to know what can you do for a school system, think about any one of those three areas and pick something to do in one of those three areas. And I'll give you some examples, very small examples. Relationships. People will not work hard for you if they don't trust you. Kids won't learn from you if they don't trust you. And if they do learn from you, they're going to stop at a certain point if they don't trust you. That's where the social justice, and when we talk about Ferguson and the unrest and all those things that are in place right now, that's a trust issue. That's a relationship issue. When you talk about partnerships, that's a relationship issue. And so with that piece, in terms of how do we make sure that relationship is real and authentic, In Jennings, poverty, we have 91%, so we have a food bank. We give 8,000 pounds of food a month. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you want to contribute, please contribute to our food bank. Easter's coming up, and we need about 200 turkeys and hams. And so if you want to contribute, that's just a real, matter-of-fact, actionable thing. But anything when you say, okay, relationships, pedagogy, curriculum, everything you read in every conference you go to after this, lump everything in those three areas. When you look at a failing school and a high-performing school, one of those three things are either broken or one of those three things, or all three are working. So you look at places like Houston ISD, it's a large district. Those three things, you can clearly see them intact. You really can. Places that are failing that in large numbers, those three things are broken, or one of those three things, when you really think about it. And so that relationship piece, college, for us, we have about 6 counselors in a small little 600 high school. That's more counselors than what I had when I was assistant superintendent in Rockwood in any large 2,000 student school. That's a lot of counselors. Why do we do that? Because we want to track our kids through high school, in college, through college, and make sure they get a job. We can do this, and it is possible. That's a relationship piece. Curriculum and pedagogy, really quick, and the things that you might want to do, and I'm just going to mention a couple actionable things just in case they want to contribute. Under the curriculum piece, an aligned standards-based curriculum. I mean, that's really the pieces that you need. And so, if you're an educator or retired educator, want to assist in those kinds of ways, we use our teachers to help develop our curriculum, to refine our curriculum, to talk about the standards. And so, any piece that you want to play in terms of curriculum and supporting curriculum materials, equipment, for us, we are a high poverty district, so technology is an issue, and we know that's kind of where curriculum is right now. That one-to-one initiative right now, to some degree, it's in place in Jennings. We would love it in a larger degree. So if you want to contribute, we would love to see one-to-one, as we have observed in the fantastic district Pattonville, which is right next door to us. We have excellence all around us. It's about how do we use our resources. So that's a curriculum piece. And the last piece is pedagogy. I love that piece. That's just good teachers in the classroom. So whether you want to help at a hiring fair, whether you're retired and you want to give, whether you want to tutor, but good teachers. For us, when we hire our teachers, the first thing they do before they ever walk into a door, they go take a home visit. We put them all on a bus, we give them a backpack, and we take them on a home visit, because that's your first relationship. Imagine saying, hey, I'm Tiffany Anderson, I'm going to be your child's teacher next month. We're teaching them, we're breaking down barriers. That's a relationship piece, but at the same time pedagogy. Because then we go back and say, okay, when you walked in that house that was high poverty, lights were off, it was dark, there were no paintings, whatever it is they saw, how do you receive that child? Please don't put up a bunch of colors and stations and have a bunch of crazy music and all of this, because it will be bouncing off the walls. Let's talk about how do you introduce a young person who's had 5 years of that into something really wonderful. Pedagogy. It's crucial. So when you say, the mass, why are we making it hard for this man and many others to make this possible? Because it is possible, and we're showing it at a small scale, and you're speaking from someone who's done it on a large scale, now 3 times over, including at a charter school. So it's possible anywhere and everywhere.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, what have the school systems been learning as a result of what's been going on in Ferguson, and what lessons maybe have you taken from the protesters, and what action might you be taking as a result of that?
Which one of you wants that?
I'll be very brief, just because I'm bordering Ferguson, and y'all know I talk a lot. I love teaching, and so teachers talk a lot, so I talk a lot, but I'm going to be very brief. Since we're so close to Ferguson, first of all, social justice should be talked about all the time. Dismantling racism and all of those pieces should be done all the time. I see Tony Neal is out there, and I've been working with that brother for about 15 years. In fact, I flew him to Virginia when I was there, his team, because that is the first workshop that we have. And if you've been having the conversations all along, when Ferguson happens, you're more open to doing some of the kinds of things, like marching to the police station and making demands, talking about it in the classroom, doing poetry, literature. Everything that you do is really surrounding about social justice and those kinds of pieces. So we've taken from there the power of voice. We've talked a lot about privilege. We continue to do that. Last night, if you saw channel, I think all the channels pretty much had something about the city council meeting in Jennings. And our students said, Juneteenth, why don't we celebrate that in Jennings? And it was right after Ferguson. It hadn't come up before. And we said, well, what are you all going to do about that? They went to the city council and said, you all need to make this as a holiday, and we need to celebrate it, and we need to recognize. We're going to have an octeenth and invite you, that's a made-up word, so that you know what it is, and we're going to teach you about Juneteenth. And anyway, they signed the proclamation last night at City Hall. And so bringing power, just that voice. So for us, it's been an ongoing kind of conversation. Anyway, it should be anywhere that you are, but it's really about how do you continue to be empowered with your voice to make actionable change, as well as with our staff. I think that was the big piece for staff members that aren't from the city or from Jennings, that are from outer areas. You know, when this all first happened in August, and myself, Riverview, and a couple of other, Ferguson, we had to close because the command center was in Jennings. And we actually, I emailed the staff, if you'd like to be about real change, today's staff development while students are out will be starting at Target, the command center in Jennings. And you know what we did? We cleaned up Ferguson. What did it do? It built a relationship. Don't be scared. This is your community. And then let's clean up. Let's work collectively. You know, so those messages continue on. Relationships, pedagogy, curriculum. It's about how do you embed those three into the Ferguson dialogue.
How are we going to send the message to everybody that this is all of our challenge? It's not just the St. Louis Public Schools or the Jennings School District or Parkway. This is everybody, and it's going to increasingly become that way. And I just have another question. That's about the teacher corps. 82% of the teachers are white females. Most of them have no diversity training in their teacher preparation or in their schools. So if the minority, low-income population increases and the teachers are not prepared for them, how are we going to make sure that every child gets a quality education?
And I guess, so there are two pieces to me, and I guess piggybacking and tying both of those two together, the regional issue as well as what you just talked about. You know, you can't have islands of excellence. You know, I love this quote, and I quoted it at the, I think I said it at the Ferguson Commission, John Dunn from the Bell Tolls, and says, I can't do well until you do well, you can't do well until I do well. We are truly interconnected, so you cannot have islands of excellence and think that you're going to have a city that's truly great or a county that's truly great. In terms of consolidating districts and all of that, I think there is some beauty to community schools. In Jennings, we don't have buses. We can't afford buses. Everybody walks. And we have great attendance. We got 10 out of 10 of our points the year before last year and 8 out of 10. But for us, that community is so rich and there's so much history, as are there in other communities. But I will tell you that in terms of having schools that are replicable, and I continue to say this message, regionally, if we know it's possible in Jennings, I mean, 2 years ago, we were almost below 50%, which would have been unaccredited. We are now 78%. 70% is accredited. We have exceeded in 2 years the accreditation benchmark. And if we know that's possible, then why can't we say as a region, let's duplicate this in ways that make sense. Let's say, okay, preschool, I've heard several times, Riverview Gardens, I've heard the superintendent say, I can't afford preschool. Let this man have preschool. I mean, let's make the things that we know worked, let's stop making it so hard. It's so odd, although I love getting federal money to help us because we rely on it, but why is it, and the SIG grant is great, many districts have the SIG grant, but why is it the worse that you do, the most money you get? Literally, if you do poorly and you're unaccredited, then you can apply for a school improvement grant and get more money. Does that make any sense? But then when you become accredited, I even saw, I guess about a year ago, the preschool piece, for school districts that are unaccredited, they'll be able to get preschool in their schools. So now that we've exceeded the accreditation benchmark, I anticipate we'll be meeting accreditation next year. So now that we've exceeded the accreditation benchmark, what? We don't qualify for what just came out? That makes no sense. Why are we making these bars that are very difficult to jump over? So regionally, agree, concur completely, think it's possible. I even suggested for the commissioner, let's have an urban commissioner and a regular commissioner because you got rural Missouri and all kind of pieces in Missouri. But that urban problem is going to impact all of us. I cannot do well, sir, until you do well, and vice versa.
that education, without a doubt, is just the great equalizer. I think within this community, what came out of Ferguson for me and for many others was the fact that we have a lot of problems, but one thing is for sure, equal access to education is going to have to be part of whatever solution we come up with. And I think it's incumbent upon each of us to figure out what we can contribute to the educational solutions that are being devised so that we can have a role in equalizing opportunities for as many children as possible. And in that regard, I just think the foundation is one way to be about that, but there are other ways as well. It's a difficult task ahead of us, but I think we have no choice. We really have no choice about finding ways to enhance the educational opportunity of children throughout the region and St. Louis Public Schools.
Dr. Anderson.
And several items were mentioned, so I'll try to kind of make my comments around those different items. I just love the brother who talked about birth through college, really, and starting really before kids ever get to school. We flew our staff to the Harlem Children's Zone to study Jeffrey Kennedy. So you have to look at models of success to know how to do some of these things. And so we looked to see what his model was, and we tried to replicate that. So we actually have birth through college. We actually try to track our families at birth. PAT, unfortunately, one of those funds that's cut. So if you want to find something to do, write your legislators, ask for people to fund PAT. But you know what? It's not funded, and we're still doing it. We realigned our budget, and actually I go through training, so I'll be a PAT parent educator as well, along with several of my staff members. So that's one model that actually works. I agree completely with that piece. And so when you look at how do we continue to move forward and scale this on a large level, I've given several examples, and so I don't want to eat up any more of your time because I'll be here for a few minutes after. And then I put on the very back, it's on the back chair, but I'll put it on the table over there. You were talking about media and how media portrays districts, and that really does play a large part in how we are able to do anything. I love our PR person. He was fantastic, just can't afford it right now. So with that piece, I think the articles that I put back there will probably tell you more than I can tell you sitting on here, but thank you for being here because it says a lot.
Bravo. Dr. Adams.
I think there were several questions. One, there is a financial